Let's talk NFL Divisional Round playoff betting picks. What's going on, everybody? Hope you're having a great day. I got the baby face out. I don't think I'm old to begin with, but I do feel a little bit younger right now. Just trying to keep it clean a little bit. Try to make it clean going into these playoffs, because last week we were all right. We went 8-6 overall with our spreads, our over-unders, and our props, but we can do better. We were just 3-3 on the spreads. I consider spreads my specialty, so I want to get a winning week this weekend. 3-1, 4-0, that is the goal. Now, regardless of how betting goes this weekend, I love the matchups that we are getting here. We've got the Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen trilogy. We've got the presumptive Rookie of the Year, CJ Stroud, against the soon-to-be two-time MVP, Lamar Jackson. We've got Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy, versus the guy that had to sit on the bench for 3 years, Jordan Love, and all of a sudden pulls off the biggest upset in recent playoff history. And then we've got the redemption stories of Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff. The NFL scriptwriters absolutely cooked with these storylines. I love each and every one of them. Before we jump into the video, guys, do me a favor, smash that subscribe button. We've been coming out with betting picks throughout the NFL playoffs, and we're going to continue that. We are going to have a prop-only show tomorrow. We're going to talk about props only, which, as you might have guessed, means we're just talking about the major markets today, the spreads, the totals, the money lines. So that's going to be the format for today and tomorrow. And without further ado, let's go ahead and let's jump right on into it. So in this first game, we've got the Houston Texans fresh off of a blowout win in the wild card over the Cleveland Browns. If you guys remember, I said that I viewed that game as the most 50-50 matchup of the wild card round. It wasn't 50-50 at all. CJ Stroud came out, just absolutely stomped the Browns. He had an amazing game. Hidden Jordan Love, ironically, had nearly the same box score, but Stroud was just absolutely awesome, and the Texans defense held Cleveland to 14 points. Looking ahead at this matchup against the Ravens, here's something that I think a lot of people have forgotten. This matchup, this game already happened. In week 1 of the season, the Texans went on the road to play the Baltimore Ravens. CJ Stroud in that game didn't throw a touchdown, but he also didn't throw an interception. He had 242 passing yards. So going against one of the best defenses in recent NFL history as a rookie debutant, that's not a bad result. Now, the Ravens ended up winning that game by was it 24-9, something like that. I know they won by about 2 touchdowns there. But overall, the Ravens, in my opinion, were the best team in the NFL this season. I feel like you can safely say it was them or the 49ers, and the fact they stomped the 49ers when they played them in San Francisco means that I think the Ravens earned that crown. However, this is where I'm a little bit hesitant with Baltimore. Lamar was awesome this season. He's my MVP pick, but in 4 career playoff games, he has been atrocious. He's averaging 225 yards, has 3 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and a passer rating below 70. So he has been awful in the playoffs. Now, I know what you're going to say. This is the best that Lamar has looked if you just judge by the eye test. I fully agree. I don't know if it's Todd Monken's influence on the offense or just more development with Lamar, or maybe he had more time to study over the offseason because he was injured at the end of last year. Whatever it is, this is the best Lamar Jackson that we've ever seen. And I think that we are going to really need to see him turn in a great performance. Even if Baltimore loses, Lamar has to be really good, or else I think we're starting to have James Harden type of conversations, Joel Embiid conversations. This guy's awesome in the regular season. He's a type of player we've really never seen before. He gets to the playoffs and he loses it all. Will that be harsh because Lamar's only 25 years old? Yeah, it would be. But we would have 5 bad games, no good games, and 2 regular season MVPs. He has to step up for his team, for himself and for his team. He has to step up. And I do trust Lamar. I do think he's going to be able to deliver a good game. Can he and the Ravens cover the 9.5 point line that we're getting in this matchup, though? I'm not so sure about that. I think you can look at it from a couple of perspectives. The first being the Ravens were able to cover against the Texans when they played them earlier in this year. Sure. But I look at this more so as Houston's playing with house money. Nobody expected them to get to this part of the season, really. I mean, there was no guarantee they were going to make it into the playoffs. And if you're worried about their inexperience and a rookie head coach, a rookie offensive coordinator, a rookie quarterback, well, they just won back-to-back do-or-die games. Week 18 against the Colts, it was win and get in. They won that, and then obviously it's win and get in, or win and advance rather, and lose and you're out against the Browns in the wild card, and they won both of those games. So this is not a stage that they're not familiar with, and again, they've been to Baltimore already. Whether you want to say that wasn't the same Ravens team and they're better now than they were then, I wouldn't argue with you, but I think the Texans are better now than they were in week 1 as well. Also, CJ Stroud has been one of the most clutch players in the league this season, especially late in games. He constantly comes up with these big throws. What I think you really need to pay attention to is, can he hold on to that quality of just being mistake-free? He only had 5 interceptions all year. He had the lowest turnover rate of all starting quarterbacks, just 1%, going against a defense that gave up the fewest points, generated the most sacks, and generated the most takeaways. Who's going to win out in that battle? That's largely going to determine what happens with this spread. Looking at some betting splits, according to vsin.com, there is right now 61% of money on the Texans spread. That's a reversal because earlier in the week, all of the favorites were getting more money on the spread. So you're seeing some more start to win out here for the Texans. Do I think that they will cover this line? I do. I think the Texans at plus 9.5, that's where my pick is going to be. The Ravens are just 1-9 as favorites of 7 or more points in the last 3 years with Lamar Jackson as their starting quarterback. That is worrying. Also worrying is the fact that number 1 seeds or teams coming off a bye in the wild card covered just about 43% of the time over the last 20 years of playoff history. And we've seen this happen to the Ravens before. During Lamar's other MVP year in 2019, they were favored to beat the Tennessee Titans and they lose 28-12. Now, weirdly, Lamar had 365 passing yards in that game. That's the only time he's thrown for more than 200 yards in the playoffs, but he wasn't that good. 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and obviously his team ultimately did lose. Now, the Ravens should win this game, but sneakily, the Texans are a top 10 scoring defense. They've got an offense that can score with anybody. If you see the Texans score 14, 17 points in the first half, I think you've got a real problem if you're a Ravens fan. That means they can't come up with an answer for CJ Stroud. And all of a sudden, you're in a shootout with a player that's one of the hottest in the league right now. Texans plus 9.5, that's where I'm going with that one. The next game on the docket, the Green Bay Packers, also plus 9.5 against the San Francisco 49ers. So the Packers shocked the world by beating the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas had won 16 straight games at home. Green Bay said, we don't care. We don't care that we're the youngest offense in the league. We're going to go out there and we're going to absolutely lay it on you. And that's what they did. I mean, Jordan Love was electric. He had 3 touchdowns, nearly 300 yards. Like CJ Stroud, the game was pretty much over by halftime. Green Bay was up 48-16 with halfway through the 4th quarter. One thing Green Bay did really well was they defended against the run. They ranked 28th in rushing yards allowed during the regular season, 128 per game to be exact. But they kept Tony Pollard to 15 carries and just about 55 yards on the ground. So that was really good for them, and it went a long way towards them picking up the victory in the wild card round. Now, the 49ers, I know that they're in a similar position to the Ravens of having just been off, but I trust them a little bit more. I think that they are a more, their skill set and what they do well is they're less likely to incur some rust than the Ravens are. With the Ravens, if Lamar's rusty, the team's kind of screwed. The 49ers, I mean, if Purdy's rusty, well, we're going to hand it off to McCaffrey. And if McCaffrey's rusty, well, then we're going to run some jet sweeps and screens for Debo. And then if those guys aren't on it, then we can work the middle with George Kittle. And you get the point that I'm making. They're a much more well-rounded team, at least offensively, than the Ravens are, who, again, are pretty reliant on Lamar to make plays for them. The 49ers were favored in every game they played this season, and still they went 9-8 against the spread. So they're used to covering these large lines. I mean, they had an average scoring margin of plus 11.5 points. So on average, they would have covered this 9.5 point line every time they were out there. They were also top 3 in scoring offense and scoring defense. The one concern that you have about the 49ers in this game is Jordan Love is maybe the most informed player in the league right now. 23 total touchdowns, only 1 interception over his last 9 games. And just like Stroud, he was electric in the wild card round. If he can come in and find success on this 49ers defense, all of a sudden you've got Brock Purdy in a very adversarial situation. And Purdy was really good for a majority of the season. He had that 3-week stretch in the middle of the year where he stunk and he was atrocious against the Ravens. But other than that, he was putting up MVP-like numbers. And he hasn't played a bad playoff game yet. He got injured early on against the Eagles last year. What are you going to do? You can't hold that against him. He hasn't played a bad playoff game, but he also hasn't been in a position where he's really had the fight taken to him. So if Jordan Love just goes bang, bang, and the score's 14-0 or 14-3, something like that, we know the well-documented issues Kyle Shanahan teams have coming from behind. We don't necessarily, I feel like most of us still don't trust Brock Purdy to will a team back from a deficit, especially if that deficit happens to be in the fourth quarter. So that's what I'm going to be keeping my eye on the most if we do get a very back and forth game. I want to see how Brock Purdy holds up. With all that being said, though, I don't think it's going to be back and forth. I don't think it's going to be that close. I think the 49ers are going to win this game, and I think they're going to cover. I think they're going to be able to hold Green Bay about 7 to 10 points behind them. And then I think at some point in the fourth quarter, they're going to get that late touchdown, a Christian McCaffrey draw, or a Debo reverse, something like that. And they're going to win this game by about 14 to 17 points. Maybe that's not as flattering as it should be for the Packers, but again, I feel like that's what the final result is going to be. In my mind, the 49ers are just going to try to control the clock, run the air out of the football, keep Jordan Love on the sideline. Again, he's one of the hottest players in the league. Don't let him go out there, find any sort of rhythm, and then you get a 3 and out. All of a sudden, he's back out on the field. Don't do that. Hold him on the sidelines, control the time of possession, get off the field on third down, and I feel like this team is built to do that. So I'm going to take the 49ers minus 9.5. Looking at the betting splits, 56% of spread money, again, according to VSiN, is actually on the Packers here. So you're seeing a little bit move in the favor of the underdogs here. Personally, I do worry about, again, the youngest offense in the league going on the road across the country. They weren't supposed to win last week in the minds of everybody out there. Was that their Super Bowl, quote unquote? Is there going to be a letdown? A lot of times when underdogs win that were counted out, you see them become a betting favorite the next weekend. A favorite is in the public bets on them more. I feel like that might be what's happening here. I feel like you got to trust the 49ers. The next game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers plus 6.5 versus the Detroit Lions at minus 6.5. So the Bucs, this was an interesting game for us on the channel. I've been going with Philly all week, and then I switched my pick at the last minute. And what a smart decision that was. Tampa Bay just annihilated them, 32-9 rather, against the Eagles. Baker Mayfield had 337 yards, 3 touchdowns, just a really great game all around. And one thing that Tampa Bay was able to do that really won them the game, in my opinion, they got tons of pressure on Jalen Hurts. They recorded an average time to pressure of 2.5 seconds. That was tied for the fastest that Jalen Hurts faced in his entire career. So even though Devontae Smith was great, he entered that game banged up. A.J. Brown didn't play, got a missed time earlier in the year with an injury, and the Eagles had the #1 offensive line in the league, but the Bucs said, we don't care. We know you're down playmakers. We're just coming right after you. And now I don't think the Philadelphia coaching job did a good job adjusting either. I feel like there were tons of situations where they were blocking 5 and the Bucs had 6 rushers, but still, you got to give credit where credit is due. Tampa Bay is top 5 in points allowed, top 3 in rushing yards allowed, and they are able to get a lot of pressure against Philly. So they've got all the confidence in the world going on the road to play Detroit. Now, Detroit was an interesting game for them. I think Ben Johnson did a phenomenal job scripting those early drives. I mean, the Lions scored touchdowns on their first 3 possessions. They only scored 3 points for the rest of the game. And the Rams actually put together more scoring drives than Detroit did. The difference was that the Rams went 0 for 3 on touchdowns when they got in the red zone, and ultimately they lose 24-23. That was the big difference in my opinion. Jared Goff went 22-27 for 277 yards and a touchdown. He was really good. I believe he went 21 for 21 or 22 for 22 when he wasn't pressured, but only 1 for 5 or 1 for 6, whatever it was, when he was facing pressure. For me, that's what this game comes down to. Can Tampa Bay get pressure on Goff? Can they heat him up? Because judging by what they did last week against the best line in the league, again, according to Pro Football Focus, then Goff is not good under pressure. You can look it up. He has one of the worst QBRs in the league when he's facing pressure. I'm trying to think of another word for pressure, but I feel like I've said it a million times already. If Tampa Bay can get after him, then they're going to cause problems for them. Tampa Bay is also amazing in the red zone. They allow the 3rd lowest percent of touchdowns on opponent red zone entries. That said, Tampa Bay is also one of the most wasteful teams on offense when they get in the red zone. So I feel like this is going to be a game of big plays. Does Mike Evans come up with that 50-yard shot? Does Amon-Ra take a little 10-yard in route, and does he have enough yards after the catch to break it for 60 yards or whatever it is. Whichever team generates more big plays is going to be the team that wins this game. I know that's easy to say in a lot of instances, but I'm saying that because I feel like when we get into the red zone, we're going to see both of these offenses stagnate a little bit. So as far as my spread bet, I like the Bucs at plus 6.5. Again, pressure, that's what I'm looking for. As long as Baker Mayfield doesn't go no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and I don't think he will. I think you're going to see this team be able to score points. Detroit was 3rd in passing yards allowed and 3rd in passing touchdowns allowed too, I do believe. So yeah, I think the Bucs are gonna be able to move the ball. I would be looking at the under on this one as well. Again, the battle for the red zone, I feel like that's gonna be key. If there are field goals anywhere inside that 20-yard line, this game's probably gonna tip under. So that's what I feel like you should be going with. Looking at the betting splits, this is the most lopsided game of the week, according to VSiN. 71% of spread money is on the Lions at minus 6.5. So we are being contrarians here by taking the Buccaneers. And then there is 72% of money on the, no, excuse me, I'm looking at the wrong line. We have 10% of money on the under, and we have 90% on the over. So we are really going against the grain with our picks here. But Bucs plus 6.5 and the under, which right now is at 48.5. Those are my 2 favorite plays for that game. And then the big one to close it all out, the Kansas City Chiefs at plus 2.5 versus the Buffalo Bills at minus 2.5. Now, I will say you can spot a rogue 3. I think it's on PointsBet. Yeah, PointsBet has this at Chiefs plus 3 and Bills minus 3. If you're a Chiefs bettor, you probably want to take that. And then if you're a Bills bettor, you can look anywhere else. FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, Caesars, all that good stuff. They have this line at minus 2.5. So a lot of people want to talk about how the Chiefs aren't the same team as in years past. And that is true. I mean, their offense is nowhere near as prolific as it has been before. Right now, they're just 15th in average scoring. That's nothing like the Chiefs team that was blowing every team out of the water a few years ago, with Tyreek there especially. But they're also not the same Chiefs team in that their defense is really, really, really good. The Baltimore Ravens, their vaunted defense, one of the best we've seen in the past decade or so, the Chiefs only allow 0.2 more points per game than the Ravens do. That's nearly equivalent. And at Baltimore, I was talking about it earlier, they forced the most takeaways. They're second, they lead the league in sacks. Well, the Chiefs are 2nd in sacks, and they're 2nd in yards allowed. They are an elite defense. And I feel like we're almost slow to recognize that, because when we think of Kansas City, we think of this explosive offense. We don't want to give them credit when they have this new identity that we aren't used to. Well, I'll tell you what, the Chiefs are a defensive team that just so happens to have the greatest quarterback in the league right now. And it's worked out for them. And I know that they struggled earlier in the year. They're only 2-4 against playoff teams. I fully understand that. I think you're seeing some changes come good for them. One thing that I want to point out, Isaiah Pacheco did not play when these two teams squared off earlier in the year. The Bills won that game 20-17. Pacheco didn't play in that one, and he's now scored a touchdown in 5 straight games. If you're telling me he's not a central part of the game plan going into this one, a cold weather game, the Chiefs' first road game in the playoffs in the Mahomes era, I would say you're kind of crazy. Rashee Rice is also doing his part to pour cold water on the fire that was the Chiefs' wide receiver room. In his last 2 games, he recorded 125 plus receiving yards. He's become a favorite target of Mahomes. Last week, he had 12 targets. Kelsey had 10. No other receiver had more than 2. So you're going to see those 2 guys really dominate the passing game. The Chiefs are also 2-0 against the spread and straight up when they face the Bills in the playoffs. Mahomes is 8-1-1 against the spread as an underdog and 7-3 straight up again as an underdog. Now, the Bills enter this game on a 6-game win streak. They did a really good job getting themselves to this position. Entering the wild card, I said that the Bills did not play well in their final 3 regular season games, even though they won, and I still stand by that. And there were some things that transpired in that Pittsburgh game that not Buffalo's fault. In fact, it was a great performance. Josh Allen was sensational. But I still feel like there were some things that you could look at and say, well, a team as experienced as the Chiefs probably isn't going to let that happen. One of them being the fumble inside their own red zone. Well, that gave Buffalo pretty much a free touchdown. when they threw Mason Rudolph threw an interception in the Buffalo end zone and took points off the board. That's probably not going to happen. And then there was the Josh Allen fake slide, which ends up becoming a 52-yard rushing touchdown. That's 21 points right there, basically, that the Bills benefited from. And they won by 14. You know, it was a good win for them against the Steelers. Their performance was great. But again, it was just those three things that I look at and I say, well, Patrick Mahomes isn't going to throw a red zone interception, an end zone interception in a playoff game like this. At least I don't think. Most of the Chiefs players are probably going to be holding on to the ball, and then the fake slide, that's just kind of a fluky play. I mean, we saw Kenny Pickett do it in college, and we chastised him. So I'm not so sure that the Bills are as much of a juggernaut as everybody thinks. What I do absolutely have to give this team credit for is, despite Josh Allen's passing numbers coming down since Joe Brady took over as the OC, he has just been incredible running the ball. He's got 16 rushing touchdowns on the season. He ran for 74 yards last week. The guy has been unstoppable, really. He's averaging, I think, 11.5 carries over his last 3 games. And when you're Kansas City and you've got to account for the downfield verticality of the offense, and then you're just constantly being bombarded by this quarterback who just throws caution to the wind, and he'll, at 250 pounds, he's coming to make contact with you. He's initiated it, and it's going to be cold. It's going to be 20 degrees. You don't want to have to tackle that guy more than you already have to. And I'm just saying, he's going to put a lot of pressure on the defense. So this is the big game of the week, in my opinion. Who do I think is going to win this one? I'm taking the Chiefs. I'm taking the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not betting against them. I don't know why a 12-6 Chiefs team is viewed as significantly worse than 12-6 Bills team. Josh Allen he has his moments. He has some incredible highlight moments, but he also had more turnovers than every quarterback in the league except for Sam Howell. Good old Sam Howell, if you can see the Commanders sticker up there. And you got to trust the Chiefs. They're the establishment. They're the team that's been there. They've done that. I think they own the Bills. I know that we haven't seen Mahomes in a road playoff game before, but I tell you what, I don't think he's going to mind. I think the Chiefs move on to a 6th straight AFC Championship game. And guys, that's going to do it for my divisional round betting picks. Like I said earlier, we are coming out with player props tomorrow, so tune in for that video. Make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Like the video if you enjoyed. Comment, let me know what your favorite plays for the weekend are, and I will catch you all in the next one.